The CEOs that I've seen who have been highly successful in leading significant change in their organizations are typically people who are not afraid to take risk. They're people who have a vision for their organization, and it may be a vision that is different than anyone has had prior to them. And they see things that others may not see and are willing to really challenge the status quo. Been really impressed with those who've also stepped outside of what a traditional association might normally think of as a business opportunity and looked at some additional services or ancillary product line that really ends up changing the face of their organization and providing a lot of value, but wouldn't have been one that you would have traditionally thought. And I think they also are people who realize that they may not please everyone with some of the decisions that they make, and they're okay with that, recognizing that they ultimately have to serve the membership or the industry that they represent, but that sometimes really innovative change is not going to be popular. Change can be very hard both for association leadership but also for association staff. So I've seen some real challenges come into play when you have either of those groups that may not be fully on board with the change that's being proposed. And so I think that it's really important that leaders recognize some of the fear that's in place in their constituents and really try to address those as best they can, because particularly from the leadership level, if you have groups of the board or groups of leadership who aren't comfortable with the change, they can pose some very significant barriers to getting to where you'd like to go. But it's also important that you have some key leaders who support you and can help you drive that change. And I think sometimes you have to make difficult decisions internally when there are staff who just aren't on board, and if you've exhausted everything that you can to try to engage them and have them share your vision, and it's just not the right place or culture for them anymore, then I think it's important that you're willing to have the fortitude to deal with some of those challenges. Otherwise, they can really stall the organization and stall the change that needs to happen to move you into the future. I think there are some financial challenges that a lot of organizations face. Maybe they have not had significant reserves set aside for the day when they need to use those dollars to invest in some significant change, and that can hold an organization back. So I think there's a fine line between saving too much and just piling your money up in the bank, never to invest in the organization, and not being prepared to be able to invest in change. So I have seen some organizations that are caught short because they're not able to really invest in new ideas and new products and be able to do that and still run the organization in a way that serves their members. I've also seen some organizations that have put their head in the sand and really have become protectionary, and rather than embrace potential alliances or relationships with similar organizations, they've chosen to look inward instead of outward, and in the end they may become irrelevant and let opportunities pass themselves by. My experience has been that boards, first of all, it's how your board nomination process works is very important to ensure that you're getting the right people on your board. When you have different elective processes that may not necessarily select board members who are there because of the skills that they bring, but more because of politics, that can lead to some challenges. But when you have a board that's put together based on the unique skills and that they bring to the table that collectively make up a very forward-thinking board, they tend to be boards that have seen a lot of research, so they know where the membership is on certain issues. They're very industry savvy. They have seen changes over time in their industry, and so they, while they can't anticipate everything, they are not. They know that change is inevitable, and so they're not afraid to really address what the organization might look like in its next iteration. And so the board that I currently work with, I think, is a great example in that I'm fortunate in that they all lead or are very successful association executives in their own right, but they're also not afraid to have the conversations about what if, and that what if question may be something very different than what we've done in the past, and they're willing to take that risk and to invest dollars to go along with that risk. And they're not. They have had conversations around this may not work, but we won't ever know until we try. And so I think that that's really important. I've worked with boards that are very conservative, very focused on building that bank account, and afraid to let go of some programs that may not be serving the membership currently or will serve them in the future, and so that restrains them quite a bit. So I'm very pleased and feel very fortunate to work with a board that isn't afraid to take those risks, and I know that they will not punish or hold the staff accountable if those risks don't work out, despite best efforts to ensure that it does. I think it's very important for the board to really be out front with it if you have the right leadership, because it's one thing for the staff to drive change, and I think it's very important that there's a partnership there. And I think that association executives, particularly in the last couple of years, who've not been leading their board, have suffered unfortunate consequences. But I do think it's important that direction does come from the board, because it also ensures that your membership is well represented and that they understand why the change is happening. And so, I think it takes one or two, and sometimes just one, really creative thinkers on the board, some visionaries who can push the board to get outside of their comfort zone so that they do think differently. And when you have leaders who can do that, it's inspiring to the staff and it's inspiring to the membership. And I think that that's really important to the success of any change that's going to really stick, and not just be the project of the year during that particular leader, but it's one who can really rally the entire board around the excitement of new opportunities for the organization. I think is where you'll see real change happen.